The incredible sense of outrage that people both in Karnataka and across India feel at the passing of a very honest IAS officer, DK Ravi, has to be seen to be believed. It's been several days since this officer lost his life, but the protests on the ground in Bengaluru continue. Today there were violent protests. A lot of people who believe that there was something mysterious to his death insist that in fact it wasn't a straightforward case of suicide, as the state government claims that there was something more, and they want the CBI to investigate. The state government thus far has said, no, there's no question of that. They feel that they can crack this case. Well, joining us to look at this and the ramification and the larger perspective in this story, Dinesh Gundu Rao, the Food and Civil Supplies Minister of the Karnataka government. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us. Sambit Patra, spokesperson of the BJP, with me in the studio. Yeah. And two incredible IAS officers in their own right, former IAS officers, Arun Bhatia and Harsh Mandar, two individuals whose credibility has been based on fighting the establishment when it's so warranted and not being pressurized under any circumstances. Mr. Gundu Rao, let me come to you first. Why is there no CBI inquiry so far?
See, our government has made a stand very clear that we have handed it over to the CID, and we are very confident that the CID will be able to crack this this investigation. And one of our best officers, he is heading the investigation, Mr. Mohanty, who is in fact has worked in CBI also. And I think people there is a huge reaction across the state and across the country, and it's very natural, I think, where people do feel outrage, and usually this rage is always taken against the establishment, against the government. But we have got nothing to hide.
So if you have nothing to hide, why don't you do a CBI inquiry? It's a simple request.
No, this is as a government, we have a primary responsibility to see that law and order and crime is a state subject, and we handle it correctly.
No, but
we are confident.
Mr. Gundu Rao, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just need to point out a very basic issue over here. There is an issue of potential state interference. It is a state subject, most certainly, yes. But this was an IAS officer working in Karnataka, an IAS officer who took on elements in the state who have political links, who have a nexus in the business community. And there is a sense that he could have been pressurized by elements within the government, which is why even the Home Minister of the country says, let there be an independent inquiry. What's wrong with that?
No, I think this is all highly speculative, point number one. Point number two is our government has always supported this officer. Even when he was the Kolar DC, the government, he had the full support of the government. In fact, the transfer took place only on his request and his father-in-law's request, and he was given a very key assignment within the commercial taxes under the Chief Minister.
No, but do you not see a conflict of interest between the government of Karnataka and this particular case?
Where is the conflict of interest?
The conflict of interest is that he was within a system which could have links to pressurize what happened, in this case, his death. No.
Is there any shred of evidence that he was investigating anything to do with the government or anything to do with our ministers? No. And you're talking about big builders and big lobbies.
Yes.
These big builders and big lobbies, they cut across party lines. They can even influence that way if you look at it the center also.
Okay.
So why do you assume, why do you look at it in a negative way? We are sure that we are on the right track, and our government will definitely see that this investigation is done properly, and we will place the report in front of the people, in front of the House, and I think then you make a judgment call.
Dinesh Gundu Rao has a point to make, and that is that there is speculation, and there is nothing to prove that this officer was necessarily investigating the Home Minister, Mr. George. There was an allegation that in fact it was because of pressure from those close to the State Home Minister that he felt pressurized to commit suicide, or maybe it was a murder. These are all allegations. The state government says these are all allegations. On what basis can you say, call in the CBI?
If these are mere speculations, and if you have nothing to hide, then why to have this element of stubbornity in your attitude? I mean, if there is a demand cutting across party lines, leave aside party lines, even senior IAS officers, the people who have been observing this young man work, even the IPS officers, those under whom he performed, they want an inquiry by the CBI because there are reasons. These are not mere speculations. This young bright chap was fighting against sand mafia. against land mafia, against the establishment. And we want the establishment to conduct the inquiry. And Mr. Gundurao was suggesting that they have a impeccable officer like Mr. Pranab Mohanty. But let me also remind him, if I am right, that Mr. Pranab Mohanty has been transferred yesterday itself. He has been transferred to Lokayukta. If he was a great officer, I don't know, he may or may not be, but I gather from the news that he has been transferred. Secondly, there are talks of embassy company, company links going to KG George. There are talks that the post-mortem report even may be changed because the Chief Minister, along with the Health Minister, visited Victoria Hospital where the post-mortem was conducted. Why had of all the places, the Chief Minister had to go to the place in the Forensic Department where the post-mortem was conducted? And I should remind him over here of the fact that in a similar instance, in Sunanda Pushkar's murder case, there was an instance where the doctors in AIIMS were influenced by a section of people who wanted a change of autopsy.
Mr. Gundurao, why don't you reply to that? Straight allegations.
Yeah,
why was the Chief Minister in a place where he was not supposed to be?
There are 2 points he made. There are 2 points Mr. Patra made. One was regarding Mohanty. Mohanty's transfer was approved by the Chief Minister before this incident took place. Because on the request of the Lokayukta, he wanted an officer of the credibility of Mr. Mohanty to work in the Lokayukta. Then when this case was handed over to CID, the Chief Minister then said that Mr. Mohanty himself will look into this case and into the investigation on this matter. So there's absolutely no doubt about that we are not going to influence the investigation. Point number 2, I mean, it's laughable to say that to manipulate the post-mortem report, the Chief Minister has to go there. This is the most ridiculous argument I've heard. If Chief Minister was so powerful, he can just do it over phone. What kind of an argument is Mr. Patra making? And third point is, when this is so hypocritical of the BJP, when they were in power, when their MLA's wife was who committed suicide in Delhi, they never gave it to CBI. When the entire Bellary was being looted, everybody knew it. They never gave it to CBI. This is the kind of hypocritical attitude they have. See, what we are saying, we will ascertain the facts. We will look into this entire investigation and we will come out with a report. Based on that, if there are ramifications which are interstate or of a higher magnitude, definitely we can consider any option. But let us investigate prima facie exactly what has happened.
Okay, Sambit, just a quick point before I go across to my other panelists. Sambit, go ahead.
Responsibility?
Mr. Gundurao is absolutely right in saying that let's investigate prima facie as to what has happened. But why, for God's sake, M.N. Reddy, the Commissioner of Bengaluru, jumped the guns within 6 hours of the suicide or murder by saying that it is a prima facie case of suicide? And why the Home Minister, KD George, within 18 hours of the murder or suicide, on the floor of the Assembly said that the suicide was because of personal reasons? How can you attribute something which you yourself are saying right now you have not judged?
Mr. Gundurao, this is true. There are all sorts of allegations which are being made. Some of these allegations are that he was involved in some relationship. Apparently, he'd had a fling with an IAS officer, perhaps an actress as well, and there was a CD which was found, and therefore he felt pressurized to take his own life. Points like this, and these are pieces of information leaked by the police to the media. All this does is to tarnish the image of this man, right? It just sullies the image of this man. If you say that the investigation is not complete, why is all of this emerging?
See, exactly. See, there is unnecessarily speculation. These are all allegations. I can't comment on these wild allegations. But the important thing is, under what section was the FIR filed? It's under the section unnatural death. Prima facie, when someone sees the scene of crime, it looks to be a suicide. Okay, it's not under there's no section 306, 307 murder or under any such clause.
No, we know that it looks to be suicide.
So the commissioner was well within his rights.
It's strange to say prima facie. The case of this man, we know the history of this man.
Prima facie. We've made a statement on the floor of the House. It's a responsible government. Based on the evidence and information that they got, they said prima facie it looks to be a suicide. There is information, and we will come out with the final
Arun
report.
Bhatia, let me come across to you. Do you believe what Mr. Gundurao has to say? He says very clearly there is no allegation. He says quite clearly, how can you raise these allegations? These are wild allegations. There is no proof to back them up. Why can't any state government get on with its job?
Yes. In a corrupt system, this is exactly the type of arguments will come up which this panelist is now voicing. Firstly, he says that always in such circumstances, rage against the government happens. Well, obviously, it is the government. It is the executive arm of the government that has power, that does things, that punishes people. So if something goes wrong, whom do you blame? You don't blame Mahatma Gandhi, you blame the people in power, the people who implement the CRPC and the IPC. So don't say always there is rage. I mean, this is a ridiculous argument in support of a corrupt system. Number two, the guy says that there is not a single allegation against any minister. Well, obviously, there will not be. Ravi was attacking the interests, the chamchas, the hangers-on, who surround ministers, contractors, black marketeers, mafia chieftains, land mafia, coal mafia, sand mafia. Every minister, every government in power has links with these people. They finance the election. This is all known. So what proof do you want? We don't go into, you are just saying allegations are baseless. Not at all. Your argument is baseless. We go to circumstances. It is the circumstances of his death that he had proceeded against these elements, the elements that support a corrupt system, the elements that support a corrupt government. Therefore, and that is documented.
Yes.
Therefore, in view of these circumstances, the inquiry should be taken out of Karnataka and given to the centre. Maybe the centre is also under the same type of pressure, then maybe it's as corrupt. Corruption is across the board in India. But within this context, it is better to have the inquiry held in Delhi than in Karnataka, because those guys are
CBI,
more far removed
till a
from
few
the
months
corrupt
back,
elements.
a year or so back, was called the Congress Bureau of Investigation by the BJP. Now the BJP likes to harp on the CBI as being perhaps a savior in this particular case. So there is a huge element of hypocrisy in this as well. So Mr. Gundu Rao's argument that going to the centre or bringing in the CBI may not necessarily work also holds a great deal of merit, it needs to be said, in a system which you, Mr. Bhatia, said is entirely corrupt top down. But let me at this stage bring in Malik Arjun. He is a friend of Ravi, somebody who's known him very, very closely. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Firstly, to the best of your knowledge, was your friend under some sort of pressure in the days prior to his death?
Yeah, see, I would like to tell a few things about DK Ravi. So, he is not like a person, he is feared with the pressures. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
He is not a kind of a person like he is not ready to fear with the pressures of like in a working environment. And also he is like a kind of like a brave-hearted person. He is ready to fight with any kind of issues and any kind of fights. So even though he has given a statement few days back, if I am ready to fight for a justice, in between something goes wrong, if somebody trap me, I am ready to go for jail. Because I am a person, I am here.
Do you believe your friend was murdered? Or was this a case of suicide? Do you believe this was actually a dressed up murder?
Yes, yes, it should be a murder. But because the person looks like Ravi, he is not such a kind of like weak-hearted person to commit for a suicide. He had such a kind of strong belief in his mind. And also in our batchmates, what we have seen him from his college days, he is having such a kind of attitude like if a person is ready to suicide for commit and all. So like he is ready to bring them into these premises and then he is to motivate them.
When you listen to these allegations that he was involved in some sort of extramarital affair, that he was caught and therefore he came under pressure because he felt it would sully his image and therefore he took this extreme step. When you hear about things like this, what do you have to say?
See, in case of Ravi, there is no chance to keep any extramarital affairs because the person itself, it shows like he is a person like he is having a one kind of principles like Ekapatni Ratast. So he used to believe on that concept. He don't like to keep all those kind of activity, even though for a friends also, if anybody is ready to do this kind of activity, he used to suggest and he used to motivate those kind of people. He has done all those kind of activities in our college days also, after college days also. Then how do you put this kind of question and allegation on Ravi? And also, suppose if he has behaved very closely with the friends, with any one of the like opposite sex kind of colleagues or somebody, do you think like there is no value for the friendship? I have a strong question to the government. There is no value for the friendship.
Harsh Mandar, to me, it seems that when you start saying that, you know, he had affairs with women who are also in the IAS, or also the quote of the day for me, a sandalwood actress. Okay, I mean, when words like this start emerging, it seems to be a dead giveaway that there is a cover-up of some sort. You know, our media, we don't get it always right, but these pieces of evidence, these words come because of leaks. These leaks are coming from vested interests. These vested interests are obviously in the police and perhaps in the government. Leaders, political leaders, perhaps police officers. What is this trying to achieve, these leaks?
I think there's a larger
in this
picture.
context,
You know,
have a one
Mallikarjun, just one moment. I'm asking that to
why
Harsh
you are
Mandar,
not
go
bringing
ahead.
it into the notice?
Okay, Harsh Mandar, go ahead.
Yeah. See, there's a larger picture here, which I think, you know,
Before he
going
dies, why
across
you
the
are not
country,
bringing
I
it to
see
the
that
notice?
there-
After death only you are bringing.
Go ahead, Mr. Mandar.
Yeah. I think that you know, I've seen very heroic officers, you know, in different parts of the country, quietly, unsung, unknown, fighting, you know, for justice, fighting against corruption, and there's no one to protect them. I think that, and the outpouring of affection that we see among ordinary people is evidence to the fact that people had faith in this officer, and I think the least we can do is to preserve his dignity and to ensure that there is no doubt about the fairness of the investigation into what circumstances he died. You know, I think that we must recognize that we are living in an era of crony capitalism where fighting corruption has become even more dangerous than in the times of Arun Bhatia and myself. You know, I think that the stakes are so high, and if an officer is battling these, we should be giving him or her protection during the battle itself. But at least, you know, when these kinds of allegations are made, let's preserve his dignity, and let's give his family and people who have respect for him, his friends, the satisfaction that there's nothing to hide.